Yeah.
But they're not. So.
It's on them.
Or the worst.
All the,
Here you go.
Yes.
all the, call the special meeting of council to order 5 p.m. June 10th. And ask if there are any amendments to the agenda.
Junior, 1 second.
Thank you. And a motion that the agenda for the special council meeting of June 10th be approved as presented. Moved by Councilor Bowman, seconded by Councilor Timpson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest.
Junior, 1 second.
And one presentation, municipal budget, Carly Collins, treasurer. Turn that over to the treasurer now,
Please.
treasurer.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, tonight's budget presentation again is on the 2024 budget. And tonight's presentation is very simple. Council had gave direction to staff at the last budget meeting to come back with a 4.5 tax levy increase, which staff has done. So currently we found savings and additional revenue, and we were able to cut a couple of places for expenditures. So our shortfall is just a tad under $550,000, which that brought us down to the 4.5 tax levy increase. So how that affects the average residential taxpayer, again, we're using $100,000 as an assessment in order to show what that would be. So when you're looking at a comparison from 2023 to 2024, you're looking at an increase of just a tad under $90 per year for a value of $100,000 for assessment. If your property was assessed at $400,000 approximately, you'd be looking at $356 a year or $29.71 a month. So pretty much what staff is recommending is that council approves the 4.5 tax levy. In order for us to get there, we will need to use $80,000 from the 2022 surplus. We currently cannot find $80,000 in extra expenses for us to cut in order to bring it down. So we are requesting to use some of those funds to bring it down to the 4.5, sorry. And that means that we will need to go into the 2025 budget year at 140, with finding $140,000, which would include the 60,000 that's already been brought over plus the 80,000. Staff feels that we've done a very good job trying to get us to the 4.5. We've done the best that we can to bring it as low as possible without affecting any sort of levels of service to the residents of Sioux Lookout. So that is our presentation to council, and we request any sort of questions.
So we'll have questions at the council table first, and once we've sort of thrashed that a bit, I will go to the public for members of the public to speak once to the budget. And then I'll bring it back to the council table where it will remain for the final deliberation. Starting with Councilor Layton.
Yeah, just in terms of the library, I couldn't find it anywhere in the budget. Are they still getting what was recommended, the 378,000 or 72,000?
So through you, Mayor Lawrence, they were able to find savings of approximately, I believe it was 10,000 in total. To bring it down. So they're looking at their contribution to be 376, 362.
So the 23, they were at 360,000. When they asked for another,
So they're asking for an additional 10,600. They were able to do some cuts as well, coming down from the original presentation in January.
I think it's more of an educational piece, just to let people know that it's our job as council to ask questions of staff. That's our role here. So we're here to ask questions. We take our job seriously. We're going to try to ask as many questions as possible. So contracted services, which is what we asked you to reduce in our resolution, did we not? Is that what we asked in the resolution?
I think it was, the request was to bring back its 4.5% tax rate. And council also requested information on contracted services, which staff provided in their package.
But we didn't ask for a reduction in contracted.
No, just an overall reduction to achieve the 4.5%.
So we really, I think it's a learning curve for us to be more fine tuned with our resolutions and things like that. Because contracted services did have an increase of $340,000 this year. So we were sort of hoping that $80,000 would come from there, but so just so that the public knows that a 1% tax increase is $122,000. So we've asked 4.5 from what you originally presented to us is a 2.26% reduction. So basically, we've asked you to reduce by $276,000. And you were able to find $175,000 in revenue. And then the actual reductions that you found were $21,000, $16,000 from the treasury and $5,000 from the rec department. And there are 18 departments within the municipality. And 3 of them, the water, sewer, the airport, are self-sufficient, and the municipal community transportation has to function at a 0, right? That's correct. So there's 13 departments. So for $80,000 for 13 departments, it's approximately was $6,000 per department that we were sort of asking for reduction. So you were unable to find that. So now we've gone to using the surplus. So what is your vision? How we're going to recover that surplus before 2025? What is your vision? What's your plans?
Yeah, do you want to direct that to answer that?
Mayor Lawrence, the staff will be bringing to council a updated fees and charges bylaw in the fall, which will set fees and charges for 2025, which we anticipate will increase revenues across the municipality. We anticipate there will be a 2023 surplus. We don't know what that amount is yet, but we will know in July or August. Staff will also be bringing forward to council later this fall a reserve fund policy, so that council can make some solid decisions about how it wants to support its reserves going forward, and how that money is going to be found and how it's going to be invested going forward, so that that is clear. That's one less decision that council will have to make at budget time. So we continue to look at all areas of the municipality. We continue to look at all functions. As we do every year, we start the budget process again for 2025 in late August, early September, and we'll continue to look for savings through that process as well.
Now, I did contact some councillors in other communities to find out how that their budget processes work in ours. And in Thunder Bay, what they do is they have what's called a budget direction meeting. They actually have it in July, but we obviously can't do that, we're just resolving our budget now. But like you said, in September, it would be very useful to have a budget direction meeting. And at that meeting, they actually set the vision, their number for what they're looking for next year. And I mean, there's obviously back and forth, but they direct council or staff at that time, which will be July next month, where what they're working towards for 2025, so that they're not in the situation that we're in. And that's why they were able to pass their budget in February as opposed to, so they're already working on the 2025 budget. So we need to look at a process like that where we're out of the gate in September with our number and we're working on savings or what direction where we're going, much earlier than we did this year. And I do recognize that that was not possible this year with the change of staffing. So it is a new staff and I would like to see us implement a new process. And I did meet with Brian as well. And I did talk about the surplus, and I do believe the surplus should always go back into the budget. It should go towards the reserves like Brian is suggesting. So that will come to council soon and hopefully we'll be able to set that policies. So I really think that we need to have some policies in place, philosophies and stuff as part of our budget process, not just this back and forth that hasn't really, in my opinion, my point of view, did not play out best that it could.
Thank you, Councillor Van Breda.
Thank you. This morning I had some time, so I kind of went through the news, talking about the state of their economy, kind of what we can look forward to. There's just a few, and then I'll end with a question as well. So a few notes just to point out. So last month, 50,000 new jobs were created in Ontario. Also, the Morningstar DBRS upgraded the province of Ontario's credit score rating to AA from AA low. So that means that the province of Ontario will be spending less money on interest, which is good because then that could possibly be more money for health, education, paying back communities so we can get more of a fair share. As of April 30th of this year, inflation is at 2.69%. On March 31st, it was at 2.90%. In April 30th of last year, it was at 4.41%. Again, we all know that the Bank of Canada lowered the interest rates for the first time since 2020. So that means that also the mortgage rates are going down. Crime is down 0.25%. So I'm saying that because after right here, right now, I do think that with the post-COVID explosion of the economy, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that the markets are cooling. And I'm going to knock on wood here and say, I do believe that the worst of the inflation is behind us as of right here, right now. Again, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but going into this meeting today, I do feel like things are slowly but surely trending in the right direction. And I hope and I pray that's going to continue in that direction. Hopefully that the interest rates can slowly but surely go down even more to ensure that we can afford to build, afford to invest, and afford, people can afford to actually build houses and everything. So I just had those notes. I just want to share that with council as well. And my question too is that not a rumor, but somebody kind of told me in Hudson was that so let's say when there's going to be a public consultation meeting for the Lost Lake Center, somebody said that town employees can claim mileage driving to and from Hudson. Is that true?
No.
Oh. Yeah, because I remember on the mileage list given to me that it did include Hudson on it. When they're saying, how much would it go from, Silicout to Thunder Bay, Silicout to Fort Bragg, Silicout to Penor, Hudson was on there. And then I was like, oh, haha. And then I said, is this an old mileage rate? And then response, but town employees cannot claim mileage driving to Hudson, right?
Lawrence, typically no, that's part of the workday, part of what's required of work. I don't know what happened in the past, but I know right now with the way the current policy is written, that's not the intent.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Council. Council Cassidy.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that we are using the surplus to offset this. I think right now we're looking at over a 1% rate, 1% impact to next year's budget with this approval. The other concern I have is that the revenue that was, well, the contract that was signed, so the revenue was able to be accessed. Some of that money was from years past. So again, there's an additional amount of funds that are going forward to supplement this year's budget that we're going to have to make up next year. So, but we want to sit here and say this is a 4.5% raise. It's really 4.5% this year and nearly 2% next year because of how we have looked at this and used surplus to offset the costs. Yeah, the Councilor Van Breda touched on the post-COVID, but the damage is done due to high inflation and the cost of everything that have gone up. And we're not immune to that. Yes, we have a high residential tax base that takes the brunt of the taxation because we don't have the industry to offset it. That's the reality we live in. I look at this and I see the medium risk and I see the 140, but I also know that there's an additional possibly 60 there, 80 that is more revenue we're going to have to make up next year. And it's coming from the taxpayer one way if we raise the rates on everything or if we do it through taxation. Taxpayers paying for it. Because if we up the rates, then everyone's going to say, well, why do I pay the high taxes and they charge me like this? It's the same either way. And I think council needs to make a hard decision here. We've been through this. We have started this process. We started it last year, I think in October, November, when staff met with us to explain to us the coming pressures with this budget. And we've been well informed for over 6 months on this. And to sit here and say, well, it's not good enough. Oh, they need to do this and that. It's the reality we live in, because if we're going to sit here and borrow from our surpluses, but we want to axe everything to the cent on our contracted services, well, guess what? We're not going to have any surpluses going forward. So we need to understand that staff is doing their job and giving us options that they feel set the municipality up to not be behind the eight ball, to not be short, to make sure that we have enough to cover what we need to cover to keep the municipality running. So I know we asked for 4.5%. I think we should consider 5%. And I think we should consider removing some of the use of surplus in this, because we're just kicking the can down the road. So that's my thoughts.
Councilor Timpson.
I think giving it down to 4.5% is exactly what council directed the staff to do. They did present several options of where the cuts could occur. They were not acceptable to us. I think 4.5% is much better than Red Lake, Dryden, which has considerably more industry than us. I think we've done a fairly good job with this. I'm willing, since we did direct council to go this, or staff to bring it to 4.5%, I think we have to honor that as council.
Councilor Thompson.
Just to talk about surpluses, in the last 5 years, we've increased our taxes total of 5.6% in 5 years. That's why Councilor Lego wants under 2%. And $2.8 million of that surplus came from COVID money and evacuation money, but that left $1.2 million surplus. That's a healthy surplus in 5 years. We've had healthy surpluses. So this budget, it hasn't been trimmed. It's a healthy budget. There's, like, for example, we have staffing positions that aren't filled that we know are in there. We have, it's not a bare bones budget. So I'm confident that there's going to be healthy surpluses. That I do agree with you, Councilor Cassidy, that I don't like the idea that we're we're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, I would prefer that we had found the $80,000 worth of cuts somewhere. That would be my first choice, or have at least a clear plan on how we're gonna save that $80,000 and the $140,000. I mean, I suggested that we don't move the $60,000 for the staffing forward. Instead, we cut the vacant position that's been only filled for 3 months in the last 15 months, but no one took my idea. So, I mean, there are other options. I mean, maybe if we go in next year and we're short, we might need to cut that position if it's not filled. If it's not filled in a year, maybe we need to look at that. To have positions that are sitting vacant for a year, over a year. You know, maybe we need to look at something different. We're functioning without them. Do we really need them when we don't have the funds to pay them? You know, so maybe we need to make some hard decisions, and those are the hard decisions that we need to look at.
So you're referring to the asset management coordinator, the one that staff have been putting overtime in to offset that because the position hasn't been there. And I think staff have outlined how many hours of overtime they've put forward already this year and in the first quarter.
But when they were putting that overtime in, we had 2 other vacant positions which have been filled, and plus we have a consultant doing that position as well. So, and plus those positions where the government puts something in place that you have to build a database or build something, it's front end heavy. And then over time, it gets less and less work. So we do recognize it's front end heavy right now. There is an extra, you know, contribution on behalf of the staff.
Councilor Van Reed.
I will say just to put up, we need an asset management coordinator. I know that Wawa has one, Horn Pain has one, First I believe has one, Kapuskasing has one. This is something that this town needs. When you have an asset management coordinator, that role will effectively quote unquote pay for itself, because it's ensuring that the taxpayers' money to buy these assets are going to use their full potential. I will vote, we need an asset management coordinator. Yesterday, we need one today, we're definitely gonna need one tomorrow. Let's say that Sioux, we are in a rare keyhole of opportunity that most towns are not envious, but will look to us. We're a growing community. We're the fastest growing community in Northwestern Ontario. So our town has to grow with the population. And I will say that I am very optimistic about the future of Silica. We have 2 new subdivisions coming in. You know, we are growing. Hopefully we can get industry in this town. I know that our economic development officer is working really hard on that. The town employees are working really hard. Again, I would take a bullet for any town employee, period. So I don't want to waste this keyhole of opportunity and be like, no, we're not going to pay for this. We're not going to upgrade. We're not going to do this. This is our time. This is like we need to grow this town. We have to, and we're making a difficult choice right here, right now. But I'm not gonna cut services and then cut the fat, and then 5 years from now, we're gonna be paying more for that. You know what I mean? We're gonna be paying more for that with less services, which means less people coming, less tourism, less everything. And we can have both worlds, but I think that 4.5% is the best that we can do. And I feel like we're like a surgeon and everything that like if we cut too deep, we're gonna cut something and that we can't patch up. That's my TED talk.
Councilor Hall.
I'd like to start off by thanking staff for working. To get to the 4.5 for the consensus of council. It's not so much the 4.5, but I'm not supporting it. I would like to work with staff for further options to reduce the operating budget in 2025. Councilor Van Reed, I don't want to cut the fat. I want to cut the fat. Services. We had a list of consultants and planners and this and that we went through, to have an idea of what it takes to run the municipality. Maybe some services are redundant. I don't know. I don't know all the services municipalities provide. I think we should take a really close look at that. Maybe scale back on some services that aren't needed. look at the numbers, take concrete numbers of people that are using certain services. And perhaps 6,000 here, 6,000 there, like Councilor Boswell spoke in each department, gets us to the $80,000. It's not gonna be easy. I've said a few times, it's not gonna be easy. The budget direction, I actually went through a copy of the Perry Sound, the way they do their budget direction or their budget. And they as well grab they target a number, and then they work with that number. And then they come back, whether it's quarterly or every 2 months, and staff comes to council and says, this is where we're at. So, let's get ahead of the game. And whatever number we decide to start with, I guess that's gonna have to be negotiated at another time. Then we can move on from there. My question is, other than the services that were presented to us, can we get a list of services within the community so we can have an idea and kind of look and keep an eye on things? We're a small town, and kind of, get a vibe, get a feel of where that's at.
So, go ahead, Mayor. Go ahead. Okay, through you, Mayor Lawrence. So, are you talking about services that we charge for, or just all services that we offer?
All services. I think maybe there's some services that we do charge for that's costing us money that's. Maybe we shouldn't be involved with.
I agree. So I just do clarify that. I think, yes, I do want to cut the fat. But we went from a nearly 10% from the first draft. We cut the fat to 4.5%. My fear is that we're gonna be so quick with the knife that we're gonna hit muscle. Or 6%, or what, yeah, sorry, from the first draft, it was nearly 10% to 6, and then now to 4.5. I don't think in my head, but I forgot. I'll come back to it.
Any further, council? Mr. Pete, would you like to speak? I'm going to go to the public now. So you're speaking. Did you want to stand up and state your name and speak? Or?
I did, you jumped on me.
I'm talking to the public. Yeah, I'm inviting the public to speak. Since you started it out, I thought you might like to.
Just trying to figure out what percentage, 400,000, because that was what was cut from the operating budget of just over $13 million. I'm trying to figure that out. Does anybody have a number? Brian, do you? What percentage did you cut from the operating budget? Because that was kind of what the discussion was last meeting, was let's try and see if we cut the operating budget and then try to fund it. And 400,000 to me of $13 million doesn't seem like a very high percent, but I don't know what it is. I just got the information.
So through you, Mayor Lawrence, the direction that council provided to staff was to come back with a 4.5% tax rate. So that to be achieved through cuts, through increasing revenues, and whatever else we could do. So those were the options we looked at. There were some cuts to the budget where we could find them. Some additional cuts to the budget, because we have been cutting since January multiple times. So I can't tell you what the total cut from January to now is. I don't have that percentage in front of me. But yes, cuts have been made to the operating budget. New revenues have been identified for the operating budget, which also reduces the impact on taxes. And we're recommending the use of some of the surplus. So that's how we got to where we are at the moment.
I think I found strange with the last meeting, the way it ended was there were 4 options. One of them was about 4.5%. There was a lower one, and all of them were rejected. And then it was sort of a last minute brought up by email. Let's try for that. It just sort of kind of happened, I guess. And I was scratching my head thinking, why if other options lower than 4.5% were rejected, why are we stuck on 4.5? Because we didn't even like 3 point, whatever it was, option 4.
Thank you. Any other further comments?
Someone answer that question, please.
The direction from council to staff was to come back with a 4.5%. I certainly raised it, but council voted for it.
I don't remember a vote, because I asked for the minutes of the meeting, and I said, can we get a record of the meeting to see if there was in fact a vote? And they weren't available.
Sometimes it's direction to staff. Is that the way we do it?
Yes, usually, sorry, through you, Mayor Lawrence, yes, generally at budget meetings, it's typically direction to staff. But by a consensus of council, it's not always a formal vote on those particular
It wasn't
directions.
a vote then, it was just sort of a consensus. Nobody heads, okay. Anyway, I just found it kind of odd that there are other options less than 4.5 and somehow we kind of landed on 4.5. It seemed to me without any kind of vote around the table that we're happy with that. Because I didn't know how you could get to 4.5 if you didn't know what the operating budget was, because there was direction to reduce the operating budget. Anyway.
The public for no thanks. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Yeah, please stand up, state your name. Yeah, state your name.
Problem with me is, and I think a lot of people, is the amount of wasted money. Like, and we have to recover it by raising our taxes or like misuse of money. It's a small town. Everybody knows what's going on in departments. I've never, excuse me. I never threw anybody under the bus by saying names or anything. I just wouldn't do that. Everybody knows what's going on. There's a lot of wasted money. There's wasted funding. There's misused funding. It's all like, well, we'll just move on. We'll just raise the taxes a little more to recover that. And I think managers, workers need to just tighten the reins a little bit and control that a little more. That really bugs me, not being able to say what I would really like to say about certain departments or whatever. Because there's wasted money. We all know that. The camera, I don't know where the cameras at the roundabout or at the streetlights. The cameras went up. The joke about the camera is all the money that takes the picture of the license plate leaves town with the money from town. Whether they're living in Dryden or whatever, right? Like just a little ridiculous.
Any other members of the public who wish to speak? Please stand, state your name.
My name is Paula Vizio, and I am familiar with the situation regarding statements, and I thought I would like to find out why there are people that can't get their tax statements mailed to them at a proper mailing address. I want to know why 3 property owners who had to go to the office to get their state tax notices because they weren't mailed. So I know of one, it's 5 years. I know of another that was 2 years and another that was a year. So why are we not getting our tax bills? Why do we have to come to the office to get them? And when we get there, they look at us like we've lost them. We haven't lost them, we haven't gotten them. So it's my understanding that when someone buys a piece of property, the lawyer in that transaction notifies land titles. Land titles then notifies MPAC, and MPAC is supposed to notify you. So is this process taking 2 or 3 years to happen? Because if it is, well, Mr. McKinnon, we've got to do something about that, because here we are, we're worried about not having money, and money is sitting out there and it's not being collected. And whose fault is it? Well, you got the process. I know for a fact that a lawyer's office in Dryden actually sends the information to the municipalities when they have had a tax, when they've had a sale of property. Not bypassing land titles, because you have to do it there first, but they also notify the municipality because they know the municipalities don't get it. So what's going on? So we're always looking for money when it's out there and it's not being secured.
See, was there
So with respect to the notification process, that is something our notifications come through MPAC. We have to await their process before we can deal with it. Ms. Pizio, we met earlier this year with respect to your tax bills and certain things that you weren't getting, and I've committed to addressing that, so that commitment stands. If there are other property owners who haven't gotten their bills, I'm happy to have that conversation with them as well and ensure that is corrected going forward.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to the budget? Are there any other members of the public with a question or comment on the budget? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council table. So CIO, we have a bylaw in the agenda, so to speak. We also have Councillor Cassidy had a proposal. Councillor Cassidy, are you willing to vote on the bylaw that's in the agenda?
I am. Can we straw dog it to see if people are willing to consider not borrowing so much from surplus? Let's see.
Straw dog.
Straw dog. Yeah.
Before we do that, what would be the alternative?
The alternative to,
If we're not gonna borrow from the surplus, what direction would we be giving? I don't mind just saying
It was 5%. So they said it will be 5%
to reduce.
to reduce what we borrow from surplus. So we're not to have less ground we need to make up next year.
does council understand what Councillor Cassidy is proposing? In lieu of CIO, you can help me, in lieu of the 4.5% increase with use of $80,000 from the surplus. He would reduce that to zero use of the surplus.
I just think here it'd be almost. I was thinking just go to 5% with 60,000 roughly.
So then it would be half $22,000, right? So,
Yes, and that's because I believe there's with some of the revenue that was. Sorry, that's because I believe with some of the revenue that was found. It goes back a couple of years, so the additional funds that we found were money that should have been included last budgets, and I know there was contract things that had to be worked and we couldn't bill for those at the time. But that was put in place now, so those payments are made, so it's money, essentially it's further surplus from previous years that's just coming to the table now that we're still going to be using to pay. So when I look at that, that's more risk for us as well. That's a challenge. So I guess that's nothing. My question is if we go to 5 and reduce, that would reduce, I think, roughly 60,000 from the 140 that's on the table there. So it'd go down to 80,000. That'd have to be raised in 2025.
Treasurer.
So through you, Mayor Lawrence, if we were to take the 2022 surplus of 80,000 out, it would bring us up to a 5.15% tax levy increase.
And that's what you're proposing, Councillor Cassidy?
No, I'm just saying 5%. Go 5%.
5%, and then.
Yeah.
So is there an appetite around the table to revise the bylaw to 5% from the 4.5? Councillor Timpson.
Question, the 80,000 goes back to.
Through you, Mayor Lawrence, I'd have to bring a report back to council as to what we wanted to use the 2022 surplus and with recommendation from staff as to where we would like to use that. So I would bring that report that was brought to council late spring. I would bring it back to council, and then council would decide whether or not, with staff's direction, they want to support what's in that report.
that report be done at the exact same time as the reserve report, because I believe the CEO would like it being part of the reserve. So you're bringing the old report forward and he's bringing the reserve report forward. Or maybe at the same time? Really conflicting.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lawrence, it's going to take a bit more time for the reserves and reserve fund policy because we want to meet council a couple of times before we actually bring the policy, so I can be sure that everyone's on the same page and we have clear direction. Ideally, we'd like to allocate the 2022 surplus sooner than that, but it's not necessary. We can hold that until fall as well. That's entirely up to council.
Well, if we would like to adopt the philosophy of putting the surplus into the reserves, we can't spend the surplus prior to doing a reserve bylaw. That is counterproductive, so we need to be on the same page with that.
All right, so council, just a straw poll, is there any interest in supporting Councilor Cassidy's suggestion? Proposal. Thank you. It looks like it's definite, Councilor Cassidy. So then I would go to the, help me, Dale.
And can we make sure this is a recorded vote? Sorry to interrupt. I just want to maybe address what Mr. Pete
We're at the
said.
council.
Yeah, is that the reason we're having a recorded vote is just I like to slow things down so that it doesn't happen what happened at the last meeting where it happened so quickly that people didn't even understand what happened. So having a recorded vote just gives people time to figure out what's happening. So I think having a recorded vote for these big issues is very important.
CAO.
So Mayor Lawrence, the recommendation is for the 4.5%. There are two bylaws that will give effect to that decision if that's where council's going. So those bylaws are on your agenda. One is bylaw number 54-24, being bylaw to adopt the estimates of all sums required for all municipal purposes during the year 2024 and to authorize the levy and collection of taxes for all municipal purposes in the municipality of Sioux for the year 2024. The second bylaw is bylaw number 55-24, being a bylaw to set the tax ratios for prescribed property classes for municipal purposes for the year 2024. And so the motion then reads that bylaw numbers 54, 24, 55, 24 be read for a second, third time.
Council next.
We're now, so just click, we're now voting on the 4.5%. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure it's clear.
All right. Removal for the bylaws. Councilor Timpson, is there a seconder? Councilor Van Breda. Any final discussion, council? Then I would need you to undertake the recording vote.
Thank you very much. Oops. Thank you very much. Agreed. So. Moved by. Timpson, that means we start explorer. Yeah, I'm just gonna write everyone's initials in so I don't lose track. Okay. Councilor Van Breda, are you in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Okay. Councilor Cassidy? In favor. You. Councilor Lego?
Opposed.
Thank you. Mayor Lawrence?
In favor.
Thank you. Councilor Costco?
Opposed.
Thank you. Councilor Bone?
Opposed.
Thank you. And Councilor Timpson?
In favor.
Mayor Lawrence, the vote is 3 in favor, pardon me, the vote is 4 in favor, 3 against, the motion carries.
Thank you, CAO. Thank you, council. Then the remaining is a confirmatory bylaw. That bylaw number 5624 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council. Municipality of Sioux, June 10th, 2024, special council meeting be read a first, second, and third time and pass. Moved by Councilor Cassidy, seconded by Councilor Timpson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We stand adjourned. Thank you.